When 3 small children drowned in a car that rolled into Clinton Lake in September 2003, it shocked not just a small community, but the entire nation. Their mother, 25-year-old Amanda Ham, and her boyfriend Maurice Lagrone Jr. were charged with first-degree murder. He was ultimately convicted of murder and received life in prison, while she was found guilty of child endangerment and sentenced to 10 years. As Clinton, Illinois, and the nation mourn the loss of Christopher, Austin, and Kylie, and aching for answers, many wondered, what went wrong? With few ideas, the newly formed Coalition of Nonviolent Communities held a town hall meeting giving residents a chance to speak up about the death penalty and to try to find a root cause that could help make sense of this tragic loss. What grew out of that meeting, and others that followed, was a kindness task force, looking for ways to support one another through the challenges of the death penalty and other situations where peace could be used to resolve conflict in the community.
We wanted a community process anyway. So we created the Coalition for Nonviolent Communities that held it. It was incredible. It was incredible because I personally had been looking for a way to get people of opposing views together and find a way that they could actually start listening to each other as opposed to arguing at each other, yelling at each other.
In addition, the high cost of murder cases and ultimately a death penalty case made it increasingly clear that money could be spent in better ways before murders happen, creating connection instead of distance between people.
The capital punishment process was very expensive, and we were spending the money to kill people as opposed to spending money using those resources to address root causes of violence in the first place. This resonated with folks here, and they wanted to have that type of community dialogue.
A discussion that started as a futile effort to understand turned into a saving grace and a beacon of light, giving Clinton school children a new way to see themselves and their community. Whether they are experiencing verbal, physical, or sexual abuse in their home, or bullying, or any form of intimidation at school, this program helps them feel strong enough to act as peacemakers and peacekeepers through the power of play.
I think children are much more open. They're not so set in their ways. So starting with children before they get set in their ways, I think, but they also have a lot of energy.
I would just say to other fellow administrators that if Play for Peace is not a part of your school culture, it needs to become a part of your school culture.
Play for Peace is a young global initiative that began in war-torn areas of the Middle East as a desperate attempt to dissolve conflict years before it arises. A conditioning high school student facilitators now spread through elementary school interactions on the playground. The focus: safety, respect, accountability, commitment, and having fun.
The beauty of Play for Peace is that you do this through a fun type setting. You're actually learning stuff while at the same time you're engaged in a fun type activity. So that's been a good thing for us at the 4th and 5th grade level.
Started when you first recruited those high school students. It was sometimes getting them to play nicely.
Yes.
Because we all had to learn. You have high school kids that may not know each other either, or, may not understand. They had to understand the backstory and understand the concept of Play for Peace because they couldn't look at each other and say shut up either. So sometimes it was starting at the very beginning, with Tina and, several of y'all having the patience of Job of saying, this is, you have to model this behavior. If you're going to be on a playground, the kids have to see you behaving this way or that way.
When Central Illinois leaders implemented the program locally, they decided their goal was to spread the word. Just a few years in, it has expanded to 3 school districts in the heartland. It reaches children early, 2nd and 3rd grades on up through high school, where students get involved as leaders in cooperative and non-conflict games with younger children during recess.
Play for Peace! Yeah, that was awesome. Okay.
They play games with no winners or losers. such as a kind of tag, where you can still tag others if you're out, should they run within the reach of where you sit. There are also circle games, for example, where the person in the middle is trying to get the whole circle to laugh by what they are willing to do in the center.
I'll see children including other children that wouldn't necessarily get included.
Play for Peace taps another set of skills some children might have no other way to showcase.
There were children in that circle that were unbelievable at rhythm and patterns, and and they can't show that necessarily in a classroom, or it doesn't come out in a classroom. They can't showcase it. Where Play for Peace, they can't, and then they're recognized for that.
From when I first started education 30 years ago, the parent really was responsible for teaching kids what those expectations are in terms of behaviors are as they walk into the school. And now my 30th year, that has really changed. That role has basically fallen to the school setting, where schools now take more of a social responsibility for making sure children are learning the appropriate social behaviors in order to conduct themselves appropriately.
Those involved have bigger plans. They dream of a daily program in grade schools and more parental involvement, not to mention taking on different kinds of conflicts. The superintendent of Clinton schools says cyberbullying, for instance, is growing. He says one minor comment can morph into something more dangerous as it travels, which causes regular school conflict.
You ask any of my assistant principals on Monday morning, what's the biggest issue they're having to deal with? It is the issue of somebody said something about me over Facebook or a text message or an email, and now I'm coming to school and I'm going to deal with that at school. And unfortunately, they want to deal with that in a physical manner.
To Clinton Elementary Principal Mary Diener, children and adults don't even consider how widespread violence is. So recognizing it as a problem in school isn't always easy.
See, it's not just children, it's a societal issue. I see it on TV, I see it in commercials, I see it in movies, you hear it on the internet, that we're always trying to shift the blame on somebody else. People get caught doing things that they're not supposed to do, but then they end up, big name people, famous people. It always ends up that they're trying to divert what they've done onto someone else.
I think we've become calloused in our country, in our society, towards the violence and the levels of violence. And there are many reasons for that. But, in working with families and children, I see the violence towards our children is not unusual. It's very common. I don't know how much progress we've made in that regard. The levels of sexual abuse that I see, the level of physical abuse that I see, the level of emotional abuse that I see, and the long-term consequences of that.
Play for Peace addresses that by giving kids more ways to cope with a slight. Options such as considering what the person who caused the conflict might be feeling at the time mean words were said. To give kids the language to be direct but kind in expressing needs. To redirect energy and find something else to play or do.
We have to know at what levels and dimensions there is violence, and violence in what we do, what we say, what we think in ourselves. So for me, that's where it starts. It has to start there. We can't do anything unless we start with ourselves. And we can't be peaceful with others unless we're peaceful with ourselves. We can see in the day-to-day activities how we're callous towards each other, what we do causes violence towards each other in very subtle ways. We were talking about seeing who we really are. If I'm with you and I really don't see you, have I diminished you? Is that violence? Is that violence towards you? And it gets that subtle for me.
This program is already getting results in just a few short years, as kids realize they have the power to handle difficulty themselves.
I don't need to go talk to an adult about this. I can deal with this because I have these tools that I can use to deal with the situations as they arise. But I think what's also important is kids also need to know that if they run out of tricks of the trade, so to speak, that they do have adults to go to that will help them.
I can tell you that the summer lunch program, our counselors have seen a difference on how the children will work things out. We're talking little kids all the way up to junior high.
The hope of leaders is once a child has learned a better way to exist in the world, that success will spread into their homes.
We do have a segment of our community that they've had a negative experience somewhere down the line, and they just said, I'm going to send my child to school, but I'm not going to be part of that. And I think we need to look to continue to work on that.
It takes time, but from there these leaders dream of whole neighborhoods and communities, not to mention the world, seeing this as the only humane approach to living. To the children, high school students, and adults who have grown to love and rely on this nonviolent existence, they start to see the possibility for connection and acceptance in more places, knowing it is possible. The leaders hope that message spreads as these children move on and move away where they are sure to find more Play for Peace programs being implemented, whether it's another state or another country entirely.